I held a wedding invitation in my hands. The groom's name made me laugh. It was my boss, the very man who fired me without reason, stole my project, and thought I would just disappear. But the most interesting part was the bride's name. It was very familiar to me. For 3 years, I had dedicated my life to TechVision, a rising star in Silicon Valley's competitive ecosystem. While others clocked out at 5, I regularly found myself bathed in the blue light of my monitor until well past midnight. My desk became a second home, littered with empty coffee cups and half-eaten takeout containers, silent witnesses to my dedication. The Nexus platform was my brainchild. I envisioned it as more than just another tech product. It was going to revolutionize how companies handled data integration. In a market saturated with fragmented solutions, Nexus would be the unified answer everyone had been waiting for. "You're killing it, Alex," Mark Donovan, my boss, would say, clapping me on the shoulder whenever he'd give investors tours of our office. "This guy right here is our secret weapon." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Mark had the kind of charisma that made you want to impress him. Tall, with perfect teeth and designer suits, he looked like he'd walked straight out of a business magazine cover shoot. As TechVision's VP of Product Development, he had the ear of the CEO and the trust of the board. "We're going to change the world with this one," he'd tell me during our late-night strategy sessions, ordering expensive sushi and talking about the future. "And when we do, I'll make sure everyone knows who made it happen." I trusted him completely. That was my first mistake. The morning everything changed started like any other. I'd pulled an all-nighter putting final touches on the Nexus code. We were 2 weeks from launch, and the anticipation in the office was palpable. Mark called me into his office around 10. I figured he wanted an update on the final debugging process. "Close the door, would you?" he said, not looking up from his laptop. I did as he asked, then took a seat across from him. The corner office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking San Francisco Bay. On clear days like this one, you could see all the way to the Golden Gate Bridge. "I've been reviewing the trajectory of the company," Mark began, his voice oddly formal. He finally looked up, his expression unreadable. "The board and I have been discussing some restructuring decisions." Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. "Restructuring?" "Unfortunately, yes. We're streamlining certain departments, and, well, there's no easy way to say this, Alex. We're going to have to let you go." The words hit me like a physical blow. Let me go. 2 weeks before launch. That doesn't make any sense, Mark. It's not personal. It's just business. He slid a folder across the desk. HR has prepared a severance package. It's generous, 3 months' salary, plus benefits. What about Nexus? I built that platform from the ground up. You can't just. The company owns all intellectual property developed during your employment. It's in your contract. His voice had turned cold, businesslike. The team will handle the launch. We'll make sure everything goes smoothly. The team doesn't understand the architecture like I do. There are still optimizations that need to be. We'll manage. Mark stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. Security will escort you to clear out your desk. Standard procedure, you understand. I sat there, stunned into silence. 3 years of my life, countless sacrifices, relationships strained to breaking point, all for this moment. To be discarded like outdated equipment. Mark extended his hand. "No hard feelings, right? I can write you an excellent recommendation." I didn't take his hand. Instead, I picked up the severance folder and walked out without another word. 2 security guards were already waiting, as if Mark had scheduled this execution down to the minute. As I packed my personal items into a cardboard box, family photos, a few books, a cactus that had somehow survived 3 years of neglectful watering, my colleagues avoided eye contact. News travels fast in open office layouts. By now, everyone knew I was being marched out. Only Raj, a database engineer I'd worked closely with, dared to approach. "This is messed up, man," he whispered, helping me pack. "Everyone knows Nexus is your baby." "Apparently not anymore," I replied, too numb to feel the full weight of what was happening. "Listen," Raj glanced around nervously, "something feels off about this whole thing. Mark's been having a lot of closed-door meetings with the board lately. Very hush-hush." Before he could say more, one of the security guards cleared his throat pointedly. "Time to go, sir." The walk of shame through the office, box in arms, security at my flanks, was the longest journey of my life. As the elevator doors closed, I caught a final glimpse of the office where I'd spent more waking hours than in my own apartment. The place I'd thought would launch my career into the stratosphere. I was wrong about a lot of things. The next week passed in a haze of disbelief and anger. I fluctuated between applying for new positions and staring at the ceiling of my apartment, replaying every interaction with Mark, looking for signs I'd missed. Had he been planning this all along? Was I just a means to an end? Then came the press release. TechVision was proud to announce the imminent launch of their revolutionary Nexus platform. The brainchild of their visionary VP of Product Development, Mark Donovan. My name wasn't mentioned once. I watched the live stream of the product launch with a bottle of whiskey for company. There was Mark on stage, describing features I'd coded, explaining concepts I'd developed, answering technical questions with information from my documentation. "The idea came to me about 2 years ago," he told the audience of tech journalists and potential clients. "I realized the industry was ready for a paradigm shift." The whiskey burned going down, but not as much as his lies. I could have let it go. Maybe I should have. Silicon Valley is full of stories like mine, talented developers used and discarded, their innovations attributed to the people with the right titles and connections. I could have moved on, found another job, started over. But something inside me had broken. Not just my trust or my career aspirations, but something more fundamental. My belief in fairness, perhaps. Or maybe it was simply that I couldn't stand the thought of Mark getting away with it, smiling his perfect smile, collecting accolades for my work. I began to plot. Not immediately, and not with any clear direction at first. Just small acts of digital rebellion. I created anonymous accounts to question the originality of Nexus in tech forums. I reached out to former colleagues, subtly probing for inside information. Most doors closed in my face. People were afraid for their jobs, unwilling to get involved in what they saw as sour grapes from a fired employee. But not everyone shut me out. "You need to see this," Raj said when we met at a coffee shop far from TechVision's offices. He slid a USB drive across the table. "Mark did more than take credit for your work. He altered the IP registration documents. Backdated everything to make it look like he was the primary architect from day one. The evidence was damning. Forged documents, manipulated timestamps, even emails where Mark instructed IT to remove my access to certain development servers weeks before my termination, all while smiling to my face and praising my work. "Why are you helping me?" I asked Raj. "You're putting your job at risk." He shrugged, stirring his coffee. "Because it's wrong, what he did. And because it could be any of us next." Armed with evidence, I considered my options. Legal recourse seemed obvious, but TechVision had deep pockets and an army of lawyers. A lengthy court battle would drain what little savings I had left, with no guarantee of victory. No, I needed something more, poetic. Something that would expose Mark for what he was, in a way he couldn't lawyer his way out of. The opportunity presented itself in the most unexpected way. An elegantly designed wedding invitation arrived in my mail, clearly sent by mistake. Or perhaps by someone inside TechVision who knew what Mark had done. "Mark Donovan and Amanda Pierce cordially invite you to celebrate their union." Amanda. My ex-girlfriend. The woman who had left me 2 years ago because I was emotionally unavailable and too obsessed with work. The same work that Mark had stolen. The coincidence was too perfect to be true. Had they been together while Amanda and I were still dating? Had Mark seen an opportunity not just professionally, but personally as well? I RSVP'd yes. Of course I did. The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. I reconnected with old colleagues who had left TechVision, gathering more evidence. I studied the Nexus code base, I still had most of it memorized, looking for vulnerabilities. And most importantly, I created what programmers call a time bomb, code that would activate under specific conditions, revealing the truth about Nexus's origins. I hadn't included a backdoor in the original Nexus design, I wasn't that devious or forward-thinking. But I knew the system's architecture better than anyone, including Mark. I knew its weaknesses, its pressure points. And I knew exactly how to exploit them. The wedding was held at the Cliffside Resort in Monterey, an obscenely expensive venue overlooking the Pacific. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, hair neatly trimmed. I looked successful, confident, not like someone who had spent weeks plotting revenge. The ceremony was beautiful, in that generic way expensive weddings often are. Amanda looked stunning in her designer gown. Mark appeared every inch the successful tech executive, beaming with pride. I sat in the back, just another face in the crowd of 200+ guests. No one recognized me, or if they did, they didn't approach. I was a ghost at the feast, watching as the man who stole my work married the woman who had once been mine. During the reception, I mingled cautiously, introducing myself as an old college friend of Mark's. I avoided the few TechVision employees present, focusing instead on Amanda's family and friends. Everyone was in high spirits, champagne flowing freely. "How do you know the happy couple?" a woman asked me at the bar. "Mark and I go way back," I replied with a practiced smile. "We worked on some projects together." "Oh, are you in tech too?" "Something like that." As dessert was being served, my phone vibrated. A text from Raj, "It's done." Mark was preparing to give his speech when the first notifications started going off. Phones chiming throughout the reception hall, breaking the festive atmosphere. Confused guests checking their screens, eyebrows raising, whispers starting. I watched Mark's face as he noticed the change in the room. He frowned, then continued with his speech, thanking everyone for coming, talking about his love for Amanda. But the whispers grew louder. One of Mark's colleagues, the chief marketing officer, I recognized her from company photos, approached the head table, showing him something on her phone. The color drained from his face. On every tech news site, on social media, on TechVision's own corporate website, the same message was appearing: the Nexus platform contains stolen code. Original developer, Alexander Hayes. Evidence of IP theft available at nexustruth.com. The website contained everything: the original code commits with my digital signature, the altered documents, the emails revealing Mark's premeditated theft, testimonials from former colleagues confirming my role as the platform's creator. The room erupted in confusion. Guests were searching the name Alexander Hayes, finding my professional profile, making the connection to the man sitting quietly in the back of the reception. Amanda was staring at Mark, her expression shifting from confusion to horror as she read something on her phone. Probably the part about how long Mark had been planning this, how he'd systematically erased my contributions while presenting himself as the genius behind Nexus. "Is it true?" she demanded, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "Did you steal his work?" Mark looked around wildly, like a cornered animal. His eyes finally found mine at the back of the room. Recognition dawned on his face, followed by understanding, then fury. "You," he hissed, pointing at me. "You did this. On my wedding day." I stood slowly. All eyes turned to me. "I simply revealed the truth, Mark. Something you should have done a long time ago." Security! Mark shouted. Get this man out of here. But no one moved. The damage was already done. The evidence was public, undeniable, and spreading across the internet with every passing second. I think I'll see myself out, I said calmly. Congratulations on your wedding. I hope you're both very happy together. As I walked out, I heard Amanda's voice, cold with rage. Tell me this isn't true, Mark. Tell me you didn't build your success on lies. I didn't stay to hear his answer. I didn't need to. Within 24 hours, TechVision's stock had plummeted. The board called an emergency meeting. Investors were demanding answers. Clients were threatening to pull out of contracts. 3 days later, Mark was asked to resign while the company conducted an internal investigation. The press was relentless, digging into every aspect of the scandal, finding other instances where Mark had taken credit for his subordinates' work. The lawsuit came next, of course. Mark's lawyers claimed defamation, attempted to paint me as a disgruntled ex-employee making false accusations. But the evidence was too solid, the digital paper trail too clear. TechVision settled quickly, afraid of further scandal. I received financial compensation, public acknowledgement as Nexus's creator, and ironically, a job offer to return and lead the platform's next development phase. I declined. I had already accepted a position at a smaller, more ethically minded startup. One where my contributions would be recognized, my name on the patents from day one. Amanda reached out a few weeks later, asking to meet. I had no idea, she said over coffee, her wedding ring conspicuously absent. About any of it. I met him after we broke up. He never mentioned knowing you. Would it have mattered if he had? I asked. She looked down at her cup. I don't know. Maybe. She hesitated. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about how things ended between us. Ancient history, I said, though we both knew it wasn't quite true. What happens now? She asked. You move on. I move on. Mark, well, that's up to him. I heard through industry connections that Mark had left the country, possibly to escape the professional humiliation. His reputation in Silicon Valley was ruined. No tech company would touch him after such a public scandal. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far, exposing him at his wedding, destroying not just his career but his personal life as well. Other times, I remember the feeling of watching him take credit for my years of work, the casual cruelty with which he discarded me, and I find it hard to summon much sympathy. Revenge, I discovered, is not the sweet satisfaction movies make it out to be. It's more complicated, messier. It doesn't undo the original harm. But there is a certain justice in truth coming to light, in letting the world see someone for who they really are. The last I heard, Amanda had moved to New York, started fresh. Mark was rumored to be working for a small company in Eastern Europe, far from the spotlight he once craved. And me? I'm still coding, still creating. But I'm wiser now. More cautious about who I trust, more careful about protecting my work. Sometimes late at night, when I'm deep in the flow of writing code, I think about Nexus, about what might have been if things had gone differently. I think about the choices I made, the lines I crossed in pursuit of justice, or was it just revenge? I still don't have an answer. But I do know this, in the world of ones and zeros, of digital footprints that never truly disappear, the truth has a way of asserting itself. Eventually. Whether that's a comfort or a warning depends, I suppose, on which side of the truth you stand.